Everything in life is constantly changing. The people we know, the places we visit, our emotions, our bodies, even our thoughts are all in a state of flux. Think of a leaf falling from a tree in autumn. It was once vibrant and green in the spring, then turned golden in the fall, and now it lies still on the ground, soon to decompose and become part of the soil. This simple example reflects a deep truth about life. Nothing stays the same. This natural process of change is something we all observe, yet often resist. We want our happiness to last forever. We fear that good health, love, success, and even life itself might slip away. But no matter how much we wish otherwise, everything that arises must eventually pass. This reality is not meant to make us feel hopeless or depressed. Instead, it offers us an opportunity to look deeper, to understand life as it really is, and to free ourselves from unnecessary suffering. In the early teachings of the Buddha, the truth of impermanence is one of the most central insights. It is part of a trio of essential characteristics that define all things in existence: impermanence, suffering, and the absence of a fixed, unchanging self. Among these, impermanence is perhaps the easiest to observe, but also one of the most transformative when fully understood. The idea is simple, but the realization can be life-changing. When we see clearly that all things are impermanent, we begin to loosen our grip. We stop clinging to pleasure, possessions, or identities. We stop pushing away discomfort, knowing that it too will pass. We learn to live in the present, not holding on, not resisting, but simply aware of what is here and now. The Buddha did not ask people to blindly believe in doctrines. Instead, he encouraged us to look at our own experience. He taught that wisdom arises when we observe the world around us and within us with calm attention. We begin to see patterns. How thoughts come and go, how feelings rise and fade, how situations change, sometimes suddenly and without warning. Over time, this observation becomes insight, and insight becomes freedom. This teaching is not reserved for monks or scholars. It is for anyone who wants to live more peacefully, more wisely, and more compassionately. Understanding impermanence does not require technical knowledge or complex study. It begins with noticing the breath moving in and out, a sound rising and falling, a moment of happiness, or a wave of sadness. Each one appears, stays for a while, and then disappears. Nothing is fixed. In this lecture, we will explore the meaning of impermanence as taught in early Buddhism. We will see how this truth applies to every part of our experience: our body, our mind, our relationships, and the world we live in. We will also examine how understanding this truth can lead us to let go of unnecessary suffering and find greater peace. The goal is not just to learn a concept, but to begin a process of inner transformation. When we truly see that everything is subject to change, we stop trying to hold on to what cannot be held. We begin to live more gently, more freely, and with a deeper sense of purpose. And perhaps most importantly, we begin to open the door to a kind of freedom that is not shaken by the ups and downs of life. Let us now look more deeply into this teaching and see how it can be not just an idea, but a path to wisdom and liberation. The idea of impermanence lies at the very heart of the Buddhist teachings. It is not just a philosophical view, but a direct observation of life itself. From the earliest discourses, the Buddha consistently pointed to the fact that all things, physical or mental, gross or subtle, are marked by change. They arise, last for a while, and then disappear. Nothing lasts forever. Everything that is born must eventually die. Everything that begins will also end. This may seem like a simple truth, but to deeply understand it is to begin walking the path toward wisdom and freedom. When the Buddha awakened under the Bodhi tree, he did not discover a supernatural truth far removed from daily life. He saw clearly the nature of existence, that all conditioned things are impermanent, that because of this impermanence, they cannot bring lasting satisfaction, and because they are changing and unsatisfying, they cannot truly be called me or mine. He shared this insight in many of his earliest teachings, especially when speaking about the nature of the body, mind, and all experiences. His message was straightforward: do not cling to what cannot stay. Learn to see the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. The concept of impermanence can be seen everywhere if we pay attention. Our bodies grow older every day, often in ways we do not notice until time has passed. Our emotions come and go like clouds in the sky. One moment joy, the next sorrow, then peace, then irritation. Thoughts arise suddenly and disappear just as quickly. Relationships change, even when we try to hold on to them. Situations in life shift unexpectedly. No matter how strong, beautiful, or pleasurable something is, it will change. This is not a punishment or a flaw in the universe. It is simply the natural order of things. The Buddha used simple examples to illustrate this truth. A clay pot once made will eventually crack or break. A ripe mango will rot if not eaten in time. A candle burns bright, then slowly shortens and dies. These are not just metaphors. They are everyday truths. By training ourselves to notice these changes, both in the world and within ourselves, we develop a kind of inner clarity. We begin to see that holding tightly to anything that changes is a cause of pain. When we want things to remain the same, but they inevitably shift, we suffer. But if we can learn to accept change, not as something bad, but as the way things truly are, we open ourselves to a much more peaceful way of being. In many of his teachings, the Buddha emphasized that impermanence is not just a quality of things we dislike, but also of things we enjoy. This is an important point because we often forget that pleasure, beauty, and comfort also fade. It is easy to accept the fading of pain or hardship, but harder to accept the fading of joy. Yet this is where wisdom lies, in recognizing that nothing is exempt. The joy of a pleasant meal, the excitement of success, the warmth of a loving moment, all are wonderful, but all are temporary. When we understand this, we learn to enjoy life fully without trying to trap its pleasant moments or avoid its unpleasant ones. The Buddha's teachings were deeply rooted in experience, not in speculation. He encouraged his followers to see for themselves how impermanence works. He did not ask them to believe blindly but to observe carefully. This is why meditation plays such an important role. In meditation, we begin to notice the rising and falling of breath, the movement of sensations, the birth and death of each thought. We see that nothing stays the same even for a moment. This direct experience builds a foundation of insight that no book or theory can replace. By recognizing impermanence, we begin to question many of the assumptions we carry. We may ask ourselves, if everything is changing, what is really worth holding on to? What is truly stable? Is there anything I can rely on that will not shift? These are not questions meant to cause fear, but to awaken curiosity and deeper understanding. And slowly, we begin to see that peace comes not from clinging, but from letting go. Comes not from control, but from acceptance. Impermanence is not meant to be a cold or harsh truth. In fact, it is deeply liberating. Because things change, suffering does not last. Because people grow and learn, mistakes can be corrected. Because nothing is fixed, transformation is always possible. Understanding impermanence gives us the courage to face life with openness and resilience. It teaches us to meet each moment as it is, knowing that whatever it brings, it too will pass. In early Buddhist texts, this message is repeated again and again. Whatever is born will die. Whatever is made will break. Whatever comes together will separate. To see this not just intellectually but with the eyes of direct experience is to take a powerful step toward inner freedom. This is not about detaching from life in a cold or distant way. It is about engaging with life more fully, with honesty and awareness, unburdened by unrealistic expectations. The Buddha's path is not one of blind faith but of seeing clearly. Impermanence is one of the first things we are asked to observe, and also one of the most profound. And by adulthood, we are often preoccupied with trying to maintain health or appearance. But no matter how much we try, the body ages, weakens, and eventually dies. Every cell, every organ. We see that it is not under our full control and that clinging to it only leads to disappointment. The second aggregate is feeling. Feelings arise in response to contact with the world, and they are of three basic types: pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. These feelings are so familiar to us that we often don't notice how quickly they change. A warm cup of tea brings comfort, but only for a few moments. A harsh word brings pain, but that too fades. One moment we are pleased by someone's smile. The next, we are irritated by a small inconvenience. Feelings arise, linger briefly, and pass away, like waves on the ocean. Yet we often chase after pleasant feelings and run from unpleasant ones, forgetting that both are temporary. When we begin to observe feelings without attachment, we stop being so reactive. We no longer build our lives around avoiding discomfort or seeking constant pleasure. We begin to relate to feelings with greater balance and clarity. The third aggregate is perception. Perception is the mind's way of recognizing and labeling experiences. This is red. This is loud. This is dangerous. It helps us make sense of the world, but it too is impermanent. What we perceive changes depending on our mood, our memories, or the situation around us. Two people can perceive the same event in completely different ways. Perceptions are shaped by habit, culture, and conditioning, and they shift constantly. By observing perception, we begin to question how reliable our interpretations really are. We see that the mind's labels are not always accurate and that they are often based on past experience rather than present reality. This helps us to become more open-minded, less rigid in our views, and more accepting of uncertainty. The fourth aggregate is mental formations. These include our thoughts, intentions, habits, emotions, and mental reactions. This is perhaps the most subtle area of change, but also one of the most important to observe. We often think that our thoughts define us, or that our personality is fixed. But when we look closely, we see that thoughts come and go like clouds in the sky. They arise based on causes and conditions, and they are shaped by what we've seen, heard, or felt. An intention to help arises, and then it fades. A burst of anger appears, but it also disappears. These mental formations are not permanent or solid. They shift based on our attention, our environment, and even the food we eat or the sleep we get. By noticing the impermanence of these mental activities, we begin to understand that we are not our thoughts or emotions. They are passing events, not permanent features. The fifth aggregate is consciousness. This is the awareness that experiences the other four aggregates. It is what allows us to know that we are seeing, hearing, thinking, or feeling. But even consciousness is not fixed. It changes depending on what we are aware of. The awareness of sound is different from the awareness of taste. When we are awake, consciousness is clear. When we are sleepy, it is dull. And in deep sleep, it is absent altogether. Consciousness arises and passes away in every moment. It is a stream, not a single thing. There is no unchanging knower behind the process. Just like the flame of a candle flickers and changes, our awareness is not a steady beam, but a rapid sequence of arising and fading. When we begin to observe these five aggregates directly in our own experience, something profound happens. We realize that everything we normally identify as myself is actually a set of processes, all of which are impermanent. There is no solid self to be found in the body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, or consciousness. This doesn't mean that we disappear or that nothing matters. Instead, it means that we can stop clinging to an idea of a fixed self. We can live more freely, more openly, and more in harmony with the way things truly are. This insight can be both humbling and liberating. It humbles us because it shows that we are not as in control as we often believe. But it also frees us because it shows that we are not bound by our past, not stuck in fixed patterns, and not limited to one identity. We can change, grow, and let go. We can stop struggling against life's natural flow and start working with it. In meditation, when we sit quietly and observe the breath, the sensations, the emotions, and the thoughts that come and go, we are training ourselves to see these aggregates in action. We are not trying to stop them or fix them. We are simply watching them change. Over time, this clear seeing helps us to let go of the need for control. It helps us to stop fighting reality and instead accept it with wisdom and compassion. Understanding the impermanence of the five aggregates does not make us cold or detached from life. On the contrary, it deepens our appreciation of the present moment. We begin to see how precious each moment is, because we know it will not last. We begin to treat others with more kindness, because we know they too are changing and vulnerable. And most importantly, we begin to respond to life not out of fear or clinging, but out of understanding and freedom. While impermanence is a central teaching in early Buddhism, it is not meant to be understood only through study or theory. It is meant to be seen and realized directly in the course of ordinary life. This insight is not reserved for meditation halls or sacred texts. It is happening all around us, in every moment, whether we are paying attention or not. The teaching of impermanence is deeply woven into daily experience, and when we learn to observe it in everyday situations, we begin to transform the way we live, feel, and relate to others. Consider first the body, which is perhaps the most immediate and visible place where change can be noticed. Every day our bodies are aging. The cells are breaking down and regenerating. The hair turns gray. The skin loses its elasticity. Our energy levels fluctuate. We may wake up feeling strong one day and exhausted the next, without any clear reason. We get colds, injuries, and illnesses reminding us that the body is vulnerable. Even small changes, like how our body feels after a good night's sleep versus after a stressful day, show that nothing remains the same. These are not rare or hidden changes. They are the texture of our daily lives. But often we ignore them or try to cover them up, preferring to live in the illusion that the body can somehow be kept young, fit, and perfect forever. By learning to observe the body with honesty and gentleness, we begin to accept its changing nature and relate to it with more care and less clinging. Beyond the body, we also experience impermanence in the ever-shifting landscape of emotions. One moment we are calm, then irritated, then joyful, then bored. Our moods swing based on conversations, weather, sleep, hormones, or memories. We might start the day feeling content, then become anxious after reading a message, then feel relief when something goes our way. Emotions arise suddenly, linger for a while, and then fade. No emotion, no matter how intense, lasts forever. And yet, when we are caught in a painful emotion, we often feel like it will never end. We believe we will always feel this way. But if we can take a step back and simply watch the feeling, naming it, breathing with it, not reacting to it, we begin to see its impermanent nature. Just as joy fades, so does sorrow. Just as frustration passes, so does excitement. When we see this clearly, we become less controlled by our emotional ups and downs. We learn to ride the waves rather than be pulled under by them. Relationships are another rich field in which impermanence can be observed. The people we care about change over time. Their interests, moods, and views evolve. The connection we share with them can deepen, drift, or even end. Sometimes we grow closer. Other times we grow apart. Friends move away. Loved ones pass on. Even within a single conversation, we can experience closeness, distance, agreement, and misunderstanding. If we hold tightly to the idea that a relationship must always stay the same, we suffer. We may become disappointed, angry, or fearful when the dynamic shifts. But if we recognize that all relationships are dynamic, flowing, and subject to countless conditions, we can meet each person with greater flexibility and understanding. We stop trying to freeze people in time and allow space for growth, change, and renewal. Social and environmental changes also reveal impermanence in unmistakable ways. The world we live in is constantly evolving. Technologies change the way we work and communicate. Political and economic systems rise and fall. Neighborhoods grow or decline. Natural disasters can alter landscapes overnight. Seasons change, cities expand, forests burn or regrow. The world is in motion, never staying fixed for long. When we expect stability or permanence in external circumstances, we are setting ourselves up for disappointment. But when we accept that change is the rule, not the exception, we can meet life's unpredictability with more resilience. We stop demanding that the world conform to our expectations and begin to flow with its natural rhythms. Even our sense of identity, our roles, preferences, opinions, and beliefs are not immune to change. We may think of ourselves as a certain kind of person, but over time we change in ways that surprise even us. What we enjoyed 10 years ago may no longer interest us. A belief we once held strongly might now seem outdated. Roles such as student, parent, worker, or leader shift and pass with time. We are not fixed personalities moving through a stable world. We are changing beings within a changing world. This realization does not need to be frightening. It can be freeing. It reminds us that we are not trapped by our past or by labels others have placed upon us. We can adapt, evolve, and respond more creatively to life. The beauty of this teaching is that it does not require any special skill or background to begin seeing. We simply need to pay attention. Notice the breath as it comes and goes. Feel the sun as it warms the skin, then disappears behind a cloud. Listen to the sound of traffic, of birdsong, of silence in the room. Watch how the body responds to food, to movement, to emotion. Recognize how thoughts shift throughout the day. The more we observe, the more we see. Everything is in motion. This seeing leads to understanding, and that understanding softens the grip of fear, attachment, and resistance. Recognizing impermanence in daily life brings many benefits. It helps us become more patient when things don't go our way, because we know the moment will pass. It helps us become more grateful when things are pleasant, because we know those moments are also fleeting. It helps us forgive ourselves and others more easily, because no mistake or emotion is permanent. Most of all, it helps us live more fully, aware of the preciousness of each moment, open to its changes, and willing to meet life just as it is. The teaching of impermanence is not a rejection of life, but an invitation to engage with it more honestly. It asks us not to run from change or to pretend it isn't happening, but to embrace it with wisdom and compassion. Every breath we take, every step we walk, every encounter we have is an opportunity to witness this truth. And the more we see it, the more we begin to live in a way that is free from clinging, fear, and delusion. Understanding impermanence is not only an idea to think about, it is something we are meant to see directly in our own experience. One of the most effective ways to do this is through meditation. In the silence of meditation, we begin to observe things we normally overlook. We see the breath moving in and out, the sensations in the body changing, the thoughts passing like clouds, the emotions rising and falling like waves. Meditation is where the teaching of impermanence becomes not just a concept, but a reality we experience moment by moment. And this direct experience can change everything. Meditation allows us to slow down and really pay attention. In everyday life, we are often too busy or distracted to notice the subtle flow of change happening within us. But in meditation, we create the space to observe. We may start by focusing on something simple, like the breath. Even here, impermanence is easy to see. The breath enters the body, pauses for a moment, and leaves. No two breaths are exactly the same. Some are long, others short. Some feel smooth, others tight or shallow. By simply watching the breath, we begin to notice that it is always in motion. It never stands still. It is a perfect example of impermanence unfolding in real time. As we deepen our attention, we begin to notice sensations throughout the body. Perhaps there is warmth in the hands, pressure in the feet, or tingling in the face. These sensations are not fixed. They shift constantly. What was sharp becomes dull. What was pleasant becomes neutral. What was neutral might become uncomfortable. By observing without reacting, we learn that these sensations are not under our control. They arise due to causes and conditions, and they pass away in the same way. If we don't interfere with them, if we don't try to hold on or push away, we begin to see that they are not personal. They are just changing phenomena, like the wind or the rain. Thoughts also become clearer during meditation. At first, the mind may feel restless, producing one thought after another. But when we pay close attention, we see that thoughts, too, are impermanent. A thought arises, stays for a few moments, and then vanishes. Another thought appears, perhaps related, perhaps completely different. We begin to see the mind as a stream rather than a solid block. We realize that thoughts are not facts, not permanent truths, not who we are. They are simply events that appear and disappear in awareness. This insight helps us relate to thinking with more spaciousness. We no longer need to fight or follow every thought. We can just observe them, letting them come and go like leaves floating on a stream. Emotions are also seen more clearly in meditation. A wave of sadness might arise, or a feeling of joy, or irritation. At first, we might want to analyze or control these feelings. But as we practice just watching, we see that emotions follow the same law as everything else. They arise, stay for a time, and fade. No emotion lasts forever. This doesn't mean that emotions are unimportant. On the contrary, seeing them clearly gives us the power to respond wisely. When we know an emotion is temporary, we don't get as caught up in it. We don't say, "I am this anger," or "I am this fear." Instead, we say, "Anger is here," or "Fear is passing through." This shift in perspective creates inner freedom. We learn to be with our emotions without being ruled by them. The practice of mindfulness supports this process. Mindfulness is the quality of being aware of the present moment with openness and clarity. When we practice mindfulness, we are not trying to fix or control anything. We are simply noticing what is happening, as it is happening. Whether we are sitting quietly, walking slowly, or going about our day, mindfulness brings our attention back to the changing nature of experience. We begin to see impermanence not only during formal meditation, but also in everyday moments when eating, listening, waiting, or breathing. Every moment becomes an opportunity to witness change, to observe without clinging. As this clear seeing deepens, something powerful happens. We begin to let go, not because we force ourselves to, but because we see that clinging no longer makes sense. Why hold on to something that will change? Why resist something that will soon pass? This natural letting go is not cold or indifferent. It is wise and compassionate. We still care deeply, but we care with understanding. We appreciate things while they are here, without trying to possess them. We learn to love without attachment, to live without fear, and to face each moment with equanimity. Meditation also leads us to deeper insights. Over time, we may begin to see that not only are individual experiences impermanent, but that the very process of being, our whole sense of me and mine, is based on shifting conditions. This can be a radical realization. It shakes the foundation of how we usually see ourselves. But far from being frightening, it is liberating. When we see that the self is not a fixed thing, but a flow of changing processes, we stop trying to protect or defend an identity. We become more flexible, more open, more at peace. This process of insight, seeing things clearly, letting go naturally, and softening the sense of self, is at the heart of Buddhist meditation. It is not about escaping life, but about waking up to life as it really is. It is about discovering that peace is not found by controlling the world, but by understanding it. And the more we understand impermanence, the more we are able to live wisely and freely within it. Through this practice, we begin to touch a kind of freedom that is not dependent on circumstances. We learn to trust in the flow of life, to find rest in the changing nature of all things. Meditation becomes not just a technique, but a way of living, attuned to reality, grounded in awareness, and open to the truth of impermanence in every breath, every step, every moment. We naturally loosen our grip. We stop chasing after what cannot last, and in doing so, we discover a peace that does. Letting go begins with a simple but powerful observation. Nothing stays. Even our most deeply held views and emotions are not fixed. And yet, so much of our stress and heartache comes from pretending that these things are permanent. We cling to youth, to success, to praise, to love, to ideas about who we are and who others should be. We resist change when it threatens what we cherish. But the truth is that clinging cannot stop loss. It only adds suffering to what is already difficult. When we embrace impermanence, we begin to see the logic of letting go. Why become attached to something that cannot stay? Why hold so tightly to people, experiences, or ideas that are, by their nature, bound to change? This does not mean we stop caring or stop loving. In fact, it means we love more wisely. We appreciate what we have while we have it. We give thanks for what is here now, knowing it will not be here forever. We relate to others not as possessions or permanent fixtures, but as fellow travelers, each one changing, each one vulnerable, each one worthy of compassion. Letting go is especially meaningful in times of loss and grief. When someone we love dies or leaves, the pain can be overwhelming. The heart aches, the mind struggles, and the emptiness can feel unbearable. But even in the midst of such sorrow, the understanding of impermanence offers a kind of solace. We realize that love does not have to be permanent to be real, that the beauty of a moment is not diminished by its passing, that what was shared can be honored without being clung to. Grief itself is also impermanent. It rises, moves through us, and softens with time. When we allow ourselves to feel it fully without resisting, it can become a path to healing and to a deeper wisdom about life's preciousness. The practice of letting go also has an ethical dimension. When we truly understand that time is limited, that nothing can be taken for granted, we begin to act more skillfully. We speak more carefully. We are quicker to forgive and slower to judge. We value honesty, kindness, and generosity, not because we are trying to be virtuous, but because we understand that these are the only things that make sense in a world where everything is in motion. We realize that holding on to anger, resentment, or pride is a burden we no longer wish to carry. The same goes for greed, jealousy, and fear. Letting go of these mind states is not a sacrifice. It is a relief. We drop them not because we must, but because we see clearly that they bring no lasting benefit. When we practice letting go, we also grow in compassion. Seeing impermanence in ourselves helps us recognize it in others. Everyone we meet is dealing with change, loss, fear, and uncertainty. Everyone is trying to hold on to something that is slipping through their fingers. This awareness opens the heart. We become more patient, more understanding, less reactive. We stop expecting people to be perfect or to meet our needs in ways they cannot. We forgive more easily, recognizing that everyone is doing their best within the conditions they face. We offer kindness not because others deserve it, but because we see our shared humanity, fragile, temporary, and deeply interconnected. Letting go is not a single moment or decision. It is a practice, a gentle, continuous process of releasing what no longer serves us. Sometimes it is easy, like putting down a heavy bag we've carried for too long. Other times it is painful, like loosening our grip on something we dearly love. But in both cases, the result is the same. We become lighter, freer, and more present. We begin to taste the freedom the Buddha spoke of, the peace that comes not from getting what we want, but from not needing things to be any particular way. There is a kind of quiet power in this. To live in a changing world without fear, to love without clinging, to grieve without drowning, to act without needing control. This is not detachment in the cold sense of the word. It is a warm, wise, and engaged way of being. It allows us to live fully, while knowing that nothing we experience can be possessed or made to last. In this space of knowing and accepting, we find something surprisingly stable, not an unchanging self or object, but a deep trust in the unfolding of life. Ultimately, letting go leads us closer to the heart of liberation. When we stop grasping, we stop suffering. When we stop resisting change, we stop being pushed around by every gain and loss, praise and blame, pleasure and pain. We begin to dwell in a deeper kind of freedom, not freedom from life, but freedom in life. A freedom that comes from wisdom, from love, and from a profound acceptance of impermanence. As we come to the end of this reflection on impermanence, we return to the simple truth that everything in life changes. From the smallest sensations in the body to the grandest movements of nature, from the joys we celebrate to the sorrows we endure, nothing remains the same. This truth is not hidden, it is everywhere. It is written in the lines on our faces, in the shifting of the seasons, in the memories that fade, and in the moments we cannot hold. Impermanence is not a distant idea to be believed in or debated. It is the ground of our experience, the fabric of reality itself. Yet, despite its constant presence, we often overlook impermanence or struggle against it. We want things to last. We seek security in relationships, in achievements, in our sense of identity. We tell ourselves stories of stability, permanence, and control. But life has its own rhythm, its own unfolding that does not follow our desires. And when we fight against this, we suffer. We suffer not because things change, but because we hoped they wouldn't. We suffer not because life is cruel, but because we wished it would obey our expectations. The teachings of the Buddha invite us to turn toward impermanence, not with fear, but with curiosity and care. They invite us to see the changing nature of all things not as a problem, but as a path. When we begin to observe impermanence directly, in our breath, in our thoughts, in our relationships, we begin to awaken to something deeper. We begin to loosen the tight grip of clinging. We begin to let go, not as an act of rejection, but as an act of wisdom. And in this letting go, we find a kind of peace that does not depend on the world holding still. This peace is not passive or withdrawn. It is deeply alive. It allows us to engage with life fully, knowing that every moment is precious precisely because it will pass. We learn to love more freely, to speak more truthfully, to forgive more easily. We see that there is no time to waste on hatred, resentment, or greed. There is only this fleeting moment, this breath, this word, this gesture, and it matters. When we know that everything changes, we stop waiting for life to begin. We begin to live now. Understanding impermanence also brings us closer to compassion. When we see that everyone around us is living in the same shifting world, carrying their own joys and heartbreaks, trying to hold on while everything moves, we soften. We become less judgmental, more open, more generous. We no longer demand that others be perfect or permanent. We simply walk with them, side by side, through the mystery of this ever-changing life. We offer kindness, not because we expect something in return, but because kindness is what makes sense in a world where nothing lasts. And finally, impermanence leads us to the heart of freedom. Not freedom from change, but freedom within it. A freedom that comes from not needing to possess, from not being bound by fear, from not being trapped by the illusions of permanence. This freedom is spacious, grounded, and quietly joyful. It is the freedom of one who sees clearly, who walks lightly, and who is no longer disturbed by the natural flow of things. It is the freedom the Buddha pointed to not in some distant heaven, but here and now in this very life, in this very breath. To understand impermanence is to see life as it truly is. To accept impermanence is to make peace with the world. To live with impermanence is to awaken to the possibility of a life filled with clarity, compassion, and deep inner freedom. May we each take this truth to heart, not as a philosophy but as a daily practice, a way of seeing, a way of being, and ultimately, a way of letting go into the beauty of what is always becoming.